We get into your markets now. Chinese and Hong Kong stocks were higher as optimism around DeepSeek continued to lift tech stocks. Better than expected inflation data also boosted sentiment. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index gained 1.8%. The Shanghai Composite Index closed up 0.6%, while Japan's Nikkei ended flat. US equities reversed their gains on Friday, this as investors digested key economic data, including a surprise drop in consumer sentiment and rising inflation concerns for the year ahead. Meanwhile, the latest US jobs report showed that payroll growth came in at a slower pace than was expected at 143,000. However, the unemployment rate fell to 4%, while wage growth accelerated by 0.5%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average declined by 0.1%. The S&P 500 ended the session down 0.95%, while the Nasdaq Composite Index closed 1.36% in the red. All right, we take a look at our local indicators. The all-share index currently trading in positive territory. It's up 0.1% at 87,553 index points. On the currency front, we see that the rand is trading at 18.45 against the US dollar, 19.05 vis-a-vis the euro, and 22.89 against the British pound. On your commodities, gold is trading past that 2,900 mark at $2,904 an ounce. Platinum is trading at $985 an ounce, while Brent crude oil is trading at $75.36 a barrel. Let's take a look at the headlines. All right, we're going to now talk to Viv Govender. He's Senior Analyst and Portfolio Manager at Rand Swiss. Thanks very much for joining us, Viv. So with the uncertainty in global markets, you've heard me refer, of course, to Trump's plan to levy that 25% on aluminium and steel. How are markets coping? Because it's a very uncertain time, and those have massive implications if he's going to levy those tariffs.
Yes, it depends on where in the world you are. I think the Indian markets and some parts in Asia, they are taking this a lot more seriously than some parts of Europe. I do think that there is a belief, especially after he backed down quite quickly from his tariffs against Canada and Mexico, at least delayed them for a while. And this came after the Canadians and Mexicans offered him basically the deal they gave Biden with a few cosmetic changes. It would appear that he may basically talk a big game, but he's not willing at the moment to really derail the U.S. growth story by having tariffs come into play in a very serious manner. And that would be the case if we do have tariffs like he's talking about, 25% of things like steel and aluminium. You think about things like, for instance, Boeing, and you think about the airplane manufacturers, around about 80% of the weight of an airplane is aluminium. That would basically make airplanes more expensive. You talk about steel, the price of cars would be more expensive, etc. So I think that would be something that he doesn't want to basically have to do. And so I would suspect that this might be a lot more, bark than bite.
So what's your reading of how our local indicators have reacted to Trump's executive order against South Africa for his take on the country's Expropriation Act, which has resulted in the withdrawal of aid funding, as well as the offer of resettlement to white South Africans who feel disaffected? And do you worry that this may be a prelude to other action that could hurt the country's bottom line, for example, AGOA?
Possibly AGOA could be affected. I do think that, however, Chulis, he's done a lot of things recently, or said a lot of things recently that, are unlikely to survive going forward. I mean, for instance, around the birthright citizenship in the US, he just made an executive order on that. That's pretty much been stopped by the courts. He's done things in the past, like the Muslim ban that, also was stopped. I think, Chulis, he's not as powerful as he makes out to be in terms of the executive orders he puts out there. But I do think when it does come to trade deals, we have to obviously make sure that the deal is lucrative for both sides. And I do think that if that is the case, then I don't think we will have any problems going forward. I do think that in terms of the impact on the market at the moment, because of, like I said, people taking what he's saying with a pinch of salt, it's not quite having the effect that would be occurring if people believed him more seriously.
So next week is the national budget on the 19th of February. Given what we heard from the SONA, what will you be looking out for as a fund manager?
Well, I mean, there's two things that are historically, certain to affect markets. One is interest rates, and the other one is taxes. So I'd like to see what the tax policy is going to be. there have been rumors about a number of different things around, national health insurance, etc., that obviously the market would be concerned about, especially certain stocks in the medical sector. I do, however, want to see, infrastructure development that was discussed this in the SONA come into play. Anyone that lives in South Africa knows that, the roads, the railways, the water systems, firstly, most of the infrastructure in South Africa is in severe need of repair and maintenance, if not building new capacity. And I think that is would be a key aspect of what's coming through, because that alone will have a huge multiplier effect throughout the economy.
Let's take a look at one stock, Telkom. They released their third quarter trading update. That's for the 3 months ended December 2024, indicating that group revenue would likely increase marginally by 0.9%, with decent growth in its data business and EBITDA up 28%. What are your thoughts on this particular stock? And are they anywhere near catching up with the likes of MTN and Vodacom when it comes to the mobile side?
Well, I think in terms of size, you must understand that Telkom's market capitalization is less than 1/5 of either Vodacom or MTN's. So it's a very small player in this space. So there's a lot of room to grow. That being said, in terms of market reaction, the market reaction has been extremely positive. In fact, Telkom is the biggest mover up today on the JSE. I do think that, in terms of the future for these companies, there is going to be opportunities that were not available in the past. We've seen internationally things like, for instance, driverless vehicles. We've seen the emergence of, much larger, more powerful AI models, etc., coming into play. And I do think that, there is scope for vastly more demand for telecommunications in the next, say, 5-10 years than people were assuming a couple of years ago, because the market did look extremely mature. So I do think there is opportunity for growth in the area. But that's it. Like I said, the Telkom is still by far a much minor player than either Vodacom or MTN in terms of the size of the company.
All right, Viv, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and your insights, as always. That's Viv Govender. He's a portfolio manager at Rand Swiss. We're going to take a quick break.